On August 27, 1883, the world shook with the most violent volcanic eruption in modern history. The island of Krakatoa in Indonesia exploded with such fury that its sound was heard thousands of kilometers away, and the skies of the world turned red. What happened next is even scarier. We'll tell you everything in this video. But before we begin, be sure to like and subscribe so you won't miss out on new videos. Thanks guys. Scene setting. Krakatoa, the volcanic island that sits between the two larger Indonesian islands of Sumatra and Java. To put it simply, Krakatoa used to be a very real place, but thanks to the powerful explosion in 1883, now it only exists in some satellite images and rough maps. Now let's go back to 1883, when there was still a small island on the map. At that time, local residents noticed black smoke rising from its summit. In addition, minor tremors and rumblings were heard. However, people did not realize how close they were to death. The eruption. 2 days later, on August 27, Krakatoa began to violently erupt. This continued for 3 days, during which the island split into 3 parts. As a result of the fourth and final eruption, the energy released was equivalent to 200 megatons of TNT, so the explosion of Krakatoa was 32,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb. The first shockwave of the eruption reached the shores of Western Australia, 3,000 kilometers from the epicenter of the explosion. The sound of the eruption was also heard on the island of Christmas, located 2,600 kilometers away. Residents of Batavia, located 965 kilometers from the epicenter, felt the ground shake twice under their feet, and they weren't even the furthest away. Imagine what those who were closer to the epicenter experienced. In addition to the loud roar, a huge amount of ash got into the atmosphere. It rose 80 kilometers into the sky and formed a cloud over the Sunda Strait. Hot ash descended onto the surrounding islands. In just a few hours, the temperature rose there by almost 18 degrees Celsius. At the same time, the water temperature in the strait rose from 26 to 35 degrees. Then, the earth shook again. It happened because the explosions created a void under the island. Thus, a giant caldera, more than 75 kilometers wide and 240 meters deep, formed in place of Krakatoa. In fact, the island blew up completely. All of this was witnessed by a Dutch engineer named Thomas Wade, who was at that moment on board the ship situated 150 kilometers from the island. He wrote in his report, "A dark column rose slowly from the sea level and moved upward. This was followed by a heavy blast of air, a flash like lightning, and a dull rumble. Then another puff, brighter and louder, followed by a strong gust of wind, the last tsunami." After the powerful explosion, a tsunami with waves up to 40 meters high covered the coast of the islands of Java and Sumatra. It all happened very quickly, so the locals did not have time to escape. They say that the water receded 30 meters from the coast and then returned, carrying death and destruction inland. The wave hit the city of Merak, located 97 kilometers from Krakatoa, unexpectedly. The first wave was not particularly powerful, but its force increased with every subsequent roll. Eyewitnesses reported that the water in the strait near the island literally boiled. Those who survived the initial impact of the wave described it as a watery mountain made of dead bodies, trees, and various wreckage. Waves crashed into coastal settlements, sweeping them off the face of the earth. Fishermen who were further away from the shore managed to escape to higher ground. Those who were on ships escaped death by a hair. For example, the captain of the Anglo-Saxon ship barely managed to leave the dangerous zone. He saw a wall of water about 90 meters high rushing towards him. The wave hit the ship, throwing passengers and crew members into the air and sweeping them off the deck. Luckily, the captain managed to drop anchor and ride out the wave. He saved his life by grabbing onto the mainsail. Only 5 people died on the ship. It is known about 165 towns and settlements that were hit by the tsunami and utterly destroyed. All of them were located within a radius of 100 kilometers from the epicenter. But the main blow was dealt to the village of Krakatoa. Most of the houses there were washed away by the water. From the nearly 500 inhabitants of the village, only 3 survived. The aftermath, the full extent of the damage caused by the tsunami, became known only 2 weeks after the disaster. By that time, rescue teams were able to reach the previously inaccessible areas. They saw a terrifying picture. Corpses littered the coast, houses and entire settlements were wiped off the face of the earth. Survivors huddled together on elevated ground without food or water. According to official figures, more than 36,000 people were killed as a result of the eruption and the tsunami. But unofficial estimates put the death toll at over 100,000 people. Moreover, thousands more were injured and even more were left without a home. In addition to people, animals also suffered. Survivors said that fish were found on dry land far from the coast, and many of them were already rotting. The stench of death hung over the area for weeks. Even those people who survived the disaster experienced health problems. Some suffered from respiratory diseases, while others lost their hearing or sight. And that's not all. The dust from the eruption spread around the world. It reached the Arctic Circle and even crossed the Atlantic Ocean. Due to the large amount of ash in the atmosphere, sunlight was blocked for months, and temperatures dropped significantly. For example, in Western Europe, the average August temperature was 15 degrees lower than usual. But perhaps even stranger were the sunsets. From September to October, blood-red skies could be seen in Europe and America. Krakatoa's eruption caused many scientists to reconsider their theories about the origin of the aurora borealis. You can imagine how much chaos such a powerful explosion and a deadly tsunami caused. But it's important to note that these events occurred in 1883. Back then, there was no internet or television, so the news spread extremely slowly. That's why the first reports of the disaster came only 2 weeks after it happened. What caused it? Geologist Jean Baru described Krakatoa as follows: "It is well known that if one takes into account the number of victims, the amount of destroyed cities and villages, the extent of the devastation, the suddenness of the catastrophe and other circumstances, this event is the greatest natural disaster in the history of mankind." So what caused it? Experts believe that the reason for the eruption was the pressure that built up beneath the island. When the island blew up, seawater rushed into the magma chamber. There, it mixed with hot rock, creating superheated steam. This chain reaction led to the fact that the magma chamber was completely cleared of magma, and the steam produced such a powerful effect that the island simply exploded. In fact, Krakatoa consists of 3 volcanoes. The central one is Perboatan. Its height is 400 meters above sea level. The eastern one, Danan, is 1,011 meters high, and the third volcano is Krakatoa. It has the shape of a truncated cone and its height is 279 meters. In 1927, a new island called Anak Krakatau emerged from the sea. Its name means Child of Krakatoa. Now the young volcano is 350 meters high. It continues to grow and reminds everyone that the monster hasn't gone away. The eruption of Krakatoa and the ensuing tsunami serve as a warning to millions of people living in the Pacific Ring of Fire. If you thought this story was scary, then watch our video about the most terrible day in the history of New York when a meteorite fell from the sky and destroyed everything in its path. Click on the screen to see more.